My name is Amelia Hayes. I'm 39 years old, and until a few weeks ago, I believed my life was stable in the way that mattered. Not perfect, but structured, predictable, earned. I work as an auto mechanic in Phoenix, Arizona. My days are simple in a way I've always appreciated. I open the shop early, usually before the sun fully settles into the sky, and spend most of the day moving from one car to the next. Oil changes, brake replacements, diagnostics, problems that make sense if you take the time to understand them. Machines are honest like that. They break for a reason, and once you find it, you fix it. I've lived in the same area for about 15 years. Same streets, same grocery store, same rhythm, work during the week, occasional overtime when things get busy, weekends spent fixing small things around the house I bought years before everything changed. No chaos, no surprises. I didn't need them. Daniel Carter is 37, my boyfriend. He works in marketing for a regional retail company. Confident, social, the kind of man who can walk into a room and immediately belong there. He knows how to adjust himself depending on who's watching and expects people to adjust back. We had been together for 8 years, living together for 4. The house was mine, bought before we met, mortgage in my name. But over time, it became ours in the way long relationships tend to blur ownership. At least, that's what I thought. Daniel has always had a sharper personality than me. Quick opinions, quick judgments, comfortable correcting people, even when no one asked. In the beginning, I saw that as confidence. Looking back, it was something else. Our anniversary was coming up last spring. I planned something simple. Dinner at a place he liked near Scottsdale. A short weekend trip a few days later. Nothing extravagant, just something that fit us. Or what I thought us was. 3 nights before the anniversary, Daniel told me he wanted to talk after dinner. His tone already had that edge. The kind that meant he had already decided something and was just waiting for me to agree. I assumed it would be about money. Or travel plans. That's usually how those conversations started. Instead, he sat across from me at the kitchen table, leaned back in his chair like he was presenting something formal, and said he had a special request for our anniversary. At first, I thought he was joking. Daniel said he wanted a free pass. Not sarcasm, not a test. He said the gift he wanted was permission to sleep with someone else. Just once. The strange part wasn't even the words. It was how calm he sounded saying them, like he was asking to borrow my car for the weekend. That was the moment something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly clicking into place. I didn't respond right away, because I was waiting for the rest of it. The punchline, the correction, something that would make it make sense. It never came. Daniel just watched me with this expectant look, like he had rehearsed this conversation already, and I was behind schedule. So I asked him the obvious question. Are you serious? He rolled his eyes immediately. That was his usual reaction when I didn't respond the way he expected. Yes, he said. I'm serious. I don't understand why you look so confused. Then he started explaining. Couples do this now. It's healthy. It keeps relationships exciting. He talked like he was quoting something. Like none of this was original thought, just borrowed justification. It felt rehearsed. So I asked the next question. Who is she? That's when his tone changed. Just slightly. Not defensive, but irritated. Like I had skipped ahead to a part he wasn't ready to discuss. It's not about anyone specific, he said quickly. He repeated that. Twice. But the way he said it told me everything. There was someone. There's always someone. I've spent most of my life identifying problems before they turn into disasters. Patterns matter. Timing matters. Behavior changes matter. Daniel suddenly asking for a one-time free pass 3 days before our anniversary wasn't curiosity. It was timing. And timing always has a reason. When I pointed that out, he got annoyed. Fast. He said I was being insecure, old-fashioned, that I should actually appreciate his honesty instead of him just going behind my back like most people would. That part stuck. He said it like he was doing me a favor. So I asked again, is there someone? This time he didn't answer immediately, just shrugged. Said it wasn't important. That the point was trust. That if our relationship was strong, this wouldn't matter. And then he added something that made everything clear. If you really loved me, you wouldn't make this such a big deal. That sentence didn't hurt. It clarified. I sat there for about 10 seconds after he said it, not arguing, not reacting, just thinking. Daniel thought he was proposing an idea. What he was actually doing was revealing a decision he had already made. He didn't want permission. He wanted validation. So I asked one last question. Have you already talked to her about this? There was a pause, half a second, but it was enough. Then he said something worse. It probably wouldn't even happen if you didn't make a big deal out of it. The option. He wanted the option. Like our relationship was something flexible, adjustable, conditional. That was when I stood up. Daniel looked confused immediately. Because I wasn't reacting the way I usually did. Normally I would stay, talk, try to fix things. Instead, I said something simple. If you want the freedom to sleep with other people, you can do that as a single man, not as my boyfriend. He laughed, actually laughed, told me I was overreacting, told me to sit down. I didn't. I told him the house was mine. I bought it before we met. Everything was in my name. And if he wanted to explore other women, he needed to pack a bag and leave. Tonight. That's when his expression changed. Not confusion anymore. Anger. He started accusing me of controlling him, of being insecure. Said I was proving exactly why people needed more freedom in relationships. I didn't argue. I walked upstairs, grabbed one of his travel bags, brought it down, set it by the door, and told him he had 20 minutes. He stared at the bag like it offended him, because for the first time in that conversation, he realized I wasn't negotiating. After Daniel walked out, the house didn't feel empty. It felt quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes from absence. The kind that comes from something finally stopping. No tension in the air. No subtle corrections. No second guessing whether a simple comment would turn into an unnecessary argument. Just stillness. I stood by the front window for a few seconds after the door closed, watching his car reverse out of the driveway. The headlights swept across the street, then disappeared. 8 years. Reduced to the sound of an engine fading into distance. I didn't cry. That part surprised me. But then again, nothing about what happened felt sudden. It just finally became visible. I locked the door, turned off the kitchen light, and sat down for a minute. Not to process emotions, but to think through the next steps. Because that's how I've always handled things. You don't fix a problem by reacting to it. You fix it by understanding what needs to happen next. And one thing I knew about Daniel, he hated losing control, which meant the calls would start soon. Not to apologize, not to reflect, but to pull the situation back into something he could manage. So before that happened, I handled the most obvious issue. I blocked his number, not out of anger, out of practicality. I wasn't interested in listening to hours of manipulation disguised as conversation. Then I blocked him on the 2 social media platforms we actually used. Clean. Simple. No loose ends. After that, I walked upstairs. The bedroom looked uneven. His side of the closet was half empty. A few shirts gone, some shoes missing, but most of his things were still there. That told me everything I needed to know. He didn't think this was permanent. He thought he'd be back. Once I calmed down, once I realized I was overreacting, once I adjusted, that wasn't happening. The next morning I called a lawyer before I even opened the shop. I didn't need reassurance. I needed clarity. The conversation was straightforward. The house was mine before the relationship. Mortgage in my name, no shared ownership. There would be paperwork, process, time. But legally, this wasn't complicated. That made everything easier. By lunchtime, my phone started buzzing. Unknown number. I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another. Ignored that one too. Then came the messages. Short at first. You need to stop this. Amelia, this is ridiculous. Unblock me. Same tone. Different numbers. I read them. Not because I was tempted to respond, but because I wanted to confirm something. There was no accountability. No hesitation. Just expectation. He still believed this was temporary. That I would fold. That this was just another argument he could outlast. I blocked each number as it came in, one by one, like closing doors. Around mid-afternoon, a message came through that was longer, more aggressive. You're embarrassing yourself. You're destroying everything over nothing. I read that one twice, not because it affected me, but because it clarified something important. In his version of reality, this wasn't betrayal. It was inconvenience. I blocked that number too. 20 minutes later, another call. Declined. Blocked. The pattern repeated. Same script. Different numbers. By early evening, I almost stopped noticing, until one call came through that I recognized. His older sister. I let it go to voicemail, not because I didn't want to hear it, but because I wanted to choose when. The message was about a minute long. Her tone wasn't angry. It was tired, like someone who had seen this pattern before. She said Daniel had shown up at her apartment earlier that day, complaining. According to him, I had kicked him out over a harmless conversation about relationship boundaries. I almost smiled at that. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. Reframing, minimizing, rewriting. She continued. Said he seemed confident when he arrived, like he expected everything to blow over quickly. Like this was just another situation he could talk his way through. That part didn't surprise me. Daniel had always believed in his ability to reshape outcomes. Push hard enough, say the right things, wait long enough. Eventually, people adjusted. Except this time, there was nothing to adjust. Later that night, another message came through from a different number. Short, sharp. You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this. I stared at that one for a few seconds. Not because it made me doubt anything, but because of how certain he sounded. Certainty without awareness is a dangerous thing. I blocked the number, put my phone down, and for the first time in years, I slept without interruption. No late-night arguments. No tension sitting in the background. Just silence. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm. Work stayed the same. Early mornings, long hours, simple problems that had clear solutions. The house stayed quiet. Exactly the way I liked it. The messages eventually stopped. Not because he understood, because he ran out of ways to reach me. My lawyer filed the initial paperwork, explained the process. No shared assets. No children. No complicated financial entanglements. Just time. Time to formalize something that had already ended. About 3 weeks after Daniel left, something changed. It started with another message from his sister. This time, her tone was different. Less frustrated. More careful. She asked if I had heard from him. I hadn't. Then she said something that caught my attention. Things aren't going the way he expected. I didn't respond right away, because I already knew what that meant. Not the details, but the direction. Still, I called her back. And when she picked up, there was a pause on the line. Like she wasn't sure how much to say. Then she told me. Daniel had stayed with her for a few days after I told him to leave. But then, he moved out. Because according to him, he had somewhere better to go. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. Some patterns don't require confirmation. They explain themselves. I didn't ask her to clarify. I didn't need details to understand the direction things were heading. Still, she gave them anyway. Said Daniel left her apartment after 4 days. Confident. Almost smug. Told her he had figured something out. That he wasn't worried. That everything would work itself out. I could picture it clearly. The same tone he used with me at the kitchen table. Like he had already decided how things would go. Like reality just needed to catch up. He moved in with her, his sister said. There it was. Not a theory. Not a suspicion. Confirmation. The woman he claimed didn't exist. The not about anyone specific. It had always been specific. It always is. I leaned back against the kitchen counter while she kept talking. Not reacting. Just listening. Because once something becomes real, it stops being emotional. It becomes information, and information is easier to process. He said she had her own place, she continued, that it would be better than staying here. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Of course he did. That's how those stories always start. Simplified. Edited. Cleaned up just enough to feel convincing. How long did that last? I asked. There was a pause. About 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 8 years replaced in 14 days. Not surprising. Just efficient. His sister let out a quiet sigh before continuing. It didn't go the way he thought. Of course it didn't. He didn't tell me everything, she said. But from what I gathered, she doesn't actually live alone. That part made me close my eyes for a second. Not out of frustration, out of recognition. He's sharing a place with her and another guy, she added. Small apartment, not stable. I didn't say anything, because there wasn't anything to say. Just pieces falling into place exactly where they were always going to. And his job, she hesitated. It's not as consistent as he made it sound. He's been picking up freelance contracts, nothing steady. That explained the confidence. It wasn't stability. It was projection. And there's more, she said. I waited. She's seeing other people. I almost laughed at that. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable in a way that felt almost scripted. Daniel wanted freedom. He just didn't expect it to apply equally. He didn't like that part, she added quietly. No, I imagine he didn't. For someone who needed control to feel comfortable, chaos isn't exciting. It's threatening. He tried to make it work, she continued, but it kept getting worse. Of course it did. Because the version of reality he chose wasn't designed to last. It was designed to feel good, briefly. What happened? I asked. Another pause. Apparently the roommate got tired of everything, she said. Too many people, too much tension. Told Daniel he needed to go. So that was it. The collapse. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just inevitable. The fantasy didn't shatter. It dissolved. Quietly. Like something that was never solid to begin with. He called me after that, she said. Sounded different. I didn't ask how. I already knew. Less certain. Less polished. Less in control. He asked if he could come back, she added. To your place? I asked. Yeah. And? I told him no. That surprised me. Not because she said no, but because she said it without hesitation. He made his choice, she said simply. I'm not cleaning up after it. I respected that. More than she probably realized. There was a brief silence on the line. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Are you okay? I thought about that for a second. Not because I didn't know the answer, because I wanted to be honest. I'm fine, I said. And I was. Not happy. Not relieved. Just steady, like something had finally stopped shifting under my feet. I figured, she said. Another pause. Then, more carefully, he's not doing great, Amelia. There it was. The part she wanted me to respond to. The part that usually triggers something. Concern. Guilt. Responsibility. I didn't feel any of those. Not because I was cold, because I understood the difference between cause and consequence. That's not surprising, I said. She didn't argue. Didn't defend him. Just accepted it. He thought this would go differently, she said quietly. I know, I replied. That was the problem. He thought. He didn't understand. There's a difference. After we hung up, I stood there for a few minutes. Phone still in my hand. Not thinking about him. Thinking about the timeline. 3 weeks ago, he sat across from me and asked for permission. Confident. Certain. Like he had options. Like he had already won something. Now, he didn't even have a place to stay. I didn't feel satisfaction. That's the strange part. No sense of revenge. No, I told you so. Just confirmation. The version of reality he chose couldn't sustain itself. That's all. A week passed after that conversation. Quiet again. No messages. No calls. Nothing. Then one evening, just after I got home from work, my phone lit up. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something about the timing made me pause. I opened the message. It was Daniel. The tone was different immediately. No anger. No accusations. Just one sentence. I need to talk to you. Things got complicated. I stared at it for a few seconds. Not because I didn't understand. Because I did. 3 weeks ago, he was telling me I'd regret losing him. Now, he was telling me things were complicated. I didn't respond. An hour later, another message came. Longer this time. He said the situation with the woman didn't work out. That he had been staying with a friend temporarily. That it wasn't stable. Then came the actual request. Carefully worded. Measured. Like he had rewritten it a few times before sending. Can I come back to the house for a while until I figure things out? There it was. Not a conversation. A reversal. He framed it as practical. Said we were still technically together. That it made sense. Then he added something that almost felt scripted. People make mistakes. We shouldn't throw everything away over one bad decision. I read that line twice. Because I remembered something very clearly. The night he asked for the free pass. He didn't call it a mistake. He called it an experiment. Now, it was just one bad decision. I still didn't respond. The next morning, there were 3 more messages. Did you see my messages? I'm serious. I need help. I know I messed up. I want to fix things. That last one lingered for a second. Not because I believed it, because of how quickly it appeared. Realization doesn't usually happen overnight, but consequences do. And sometimes people confuse the two. I set my phone down. Didn't answer. Because at that point, there was nothing left to discuss. I didn't respond that morning. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to be sure that whatever I said came from clarity, not reaction. There's a difference between answering someone and resolving something. And I wasn't interested in reopening anything that had already ended. Still, he didn't stop. Around noon, another message came through. Short. I really need to talk to you. Then another. Please. That word stood out. Not because it was meaningful, because it was new. Daniel didn't say please. Not when things were going his way. Not when he felt in control. Please only showed up when options started disappearing. I went about my day like normal. Work, customers, diagnostics, small problems with clear solutions. The kind of problems that don't argue back. By the time I got home, there were 2 more missed calls. Same unknown number. Same pattern. I set my keys down, poured a glass of water, and sat at the kitchen table. The same table. Same seat. Just a different reality. My phone buzzed again. Another call. This time, I answered. There was a brief silence on the line. Then his voice. Amelia? He sounded different. Not just tired. Uncertain. Like someone trying to figure out how to stand in a place they no longer belong. I didn't think you'd pick up, he said quickly. I almost didn't, I replied. Another pause. Then he started talking. Fast. Like if he slowed down, the conversation might end before he finished. I know I messed up, he said. I know how it looks. But things didn't go the way I thought they would. I didn't interrupt, because this part wasn't for me. It was for him. I didn't know everything, he continued. She wasn't honest about anything. Her job, her situation, even the fact that she was seeing other people. There it was again. The surprise. As if honesty was something he expected, after asking for permission to break it. I thought it was different, he added. I let that sit for a second, then asked the only question that mattered. Different how? He hesitated, like he hadn't actually thought that part through. I don't know, he said finally. Just better. Better? A vague word people use when they don't have specifics, when they're chasing a feeling instead of reality. It wasn't, he said quietly. No, it wasn't. There was a silence after that. Not uncomfortable, just empty. Then he shifted. You could hear it in his tone, from explanation to request. I don't have anywhere stable right now, he said. I've been staying with a friend, but it's temporary. I just need a little time to figure things out. There it was. Not apology, not accountability. Logistics. I was thinking, he continued carefully, since we're still technically together, maybe I could come back to the house for a while. I looked around the kitchen as he said that. Same cabinets, same floor, same quiet. The word he used echoed for a second. Back, as if nothing had changed, as if leaving was temporary, as if meaning could be reversed just by asking. I wouldn't stay long, he added quickly, just until I get things sorted. I didn't respond immediately. Not because I was unsure, because I wanted him to hear the silence, to sit in it, to understand that this wasn't a negotiation. Finally, I spoke. No, the word landed clean. No hesitation, no emotion. Just final. There was a long pause on the line, longer than any silence we had shared before. Are you serious? He asked quietly. Yes. Another pause. What am I supposed to do? He said. That question felt familiar. Not because I had heard it before, because I had lived it. The night he sat across from me and asked for that free pass, he didn't ask what it would do to me. He didn't ask what I was supposed to do with that. He only asked what he could take. Now, he was asking what he should do, so I gave him the same answer he gave me. Figure it out. There was a sharp inhale on the other end of the line, like the air had suddenly changed. That's it? He said, after everything? I almost asked him what everything meant, but I already knew. In his version of the story, everything was history, time, shared space. In mine, everything was that moment at the table, the one where he showed me exactly what I meant to him. You made a choice, I said calmly. So did I. That's not fair, he said quickly. Fair. Another word people use when reality doesn't match expectation. I said I made a mistake, he added. Doesn't that count for something? I thought about that. Not the words. The timing. 3 weeks ago, he wasn't confused. He wasn't uncertain. He was confident. Now it was a mistake. Mistakes don't start with planning, I said. Silence. Then, I just need a place to stay, he said, softer this time. And there it was. Stripped of explanation. Stripped of framing. Just the truth. Need. Not us. Not the relationship. Not repair. Just need. That place isn't here, I replied. Another long pause. This one heavier. Less resistance. More realization. So that's it? He asked again. Yes. The word didn't feel harsh. It felt accurate. After that, neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then he exhaled. Slow. Like something finally settled. I didn't think you'd actually go through with this, he said. I almost smiled at that. Not because it was funny. Because it was honest. I know, I said. And that was the problem. He didn't think. He assumed. And assumptions don't hold up when reality shows up. I thought you'd calm down, he added. I didn't, I replied. Another silence. Then quietly, I messed up. This time, it sounded real. Not because of the words. Because of the absence of everything else. No defense. No framing. Just acknowledgement. But acknowledgement doesn't undo anything. And it doesn't rebuild what was never respected. I know, I said. And then I ended the call. Not abruptly. Not emotionally. Just finished. That night, he sent 2 more messages. The first one. Are you really not going to give me another chance? The second. We had 8 years. That has to mean something. I read both. Didn't respond. Because meaning isn't measured in time. It's measured in decisions. And he had already made his. After that call, everything became quieter. Not just in the house. In my head. No more interruptions. No more decisions waiting to be made. No more uncertainty about what this was or where it was going. It was already done. All that was left was the process. A few days later, my lawyer called to confirm that Daniel had received the paperwork. There was a pause before she continued. He wasn't happy, she said carefully. He asked if there was any way to delay things. I leaned back in my chair, phone resting against my shoulder. Is there? I asked. No, she said, not at this stage. That made sense. Reality doesn't pause just because someone finally understands it. Apparently, he had asked more than once, tried to frame it as a misunderstanding. A situation that got out of hand, something that didn't need to be permanent. But permanence isn't decided by intention. It's decided by consequence. Once something crosses a certain line, it doesn't go back. After that call, I went back to work. Finished the day the same way I always did. Closed the shop, checked the schedule for the next morning, locked up. Routine. There's something steady about routine. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't argue. It just continues. A few days later, his sister called again. This time, there was no hesitation in her voice, just straightforward honesty. He's been moving around, she said, staying with friends. A few nights here, a few nights there. Nothing stable. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't hear her, because I was letting the image settle. Daniel, the man who sat across from me talking about options. Now, without any. He says he regrets everything, she added. Of course he does. Regret tends to show up when outcomes don't match expectations. Not before. He thinks you're being too harsh, she continued, that you could at least help him out for a little while. That part almost made me laugh. Not because it was ridiculous, because it was consistent. Even now, there was still an expectation, still a belief that access to me was something he could request. I'm not responsible for fixing this, I said calmly. I know, she replied, and I believed her. There was no argument in her tone, no attempt to defend him, just acknowledgement. He didn't think it would turn out like this, she said quietly. I know, I repeated. That was always the problem. He didn't think. He assumed. And assumptions don't survive reality. After we hung up, I stood in the living room for a while, not thinking about him, thinking about the difference between what people say and what they reveal. Because that night at the kitchen table, it wasn't about the request. Not really. It was about what the request meant. He didn't want to cheat. He wanted permission to stop respecting the relationship without losing the benefits of it. He wanted both, freedom and stability, options and security. And when he couldn't have both, he chose options. That's the part people misunderstand. It wasn't one bad decision. It was a clear one, a deliberate one. And once someone shows you that clearly, there's nothing left to fix. The process moved forward exactly the way my lawyer said it would. Paperwork, timelines, signatures, no drama, no complications, just completion. I didn't hear from Daniel again after that. No more calls from unknown numbers. No more messages. No more attempts to reopen something that had already closed. And the strange part is, my life didn't fall apart. It didn't even change that much. Same mornings, same work, same quiet evenings. The difference was, there was no tension underneath it anymore. No constant adjustment. No subtle pressure to accept things that didn't make sense. Just clarity. Sometimes people ask if I regret it. If I ever think about what would have happened if I gave him another chance. If I ever wonder whether 8 years should have meant more. I don't. Because meaning isn't proven by time. It's proven by choices. And the night Daniel asked for that free pass, he made his. He didn't want a relationship. He wanted options. And once someone shows you that, the smartest thing you can do is step out of the way and let them go chase those options somewhere else.